not involved in the crisis of his time, of him it can be said he never truly lived.
Our similarities are such that my traumas may have come from before combat, but their traumas are so close to the same. It may have nothing to do with combat. It's trauma in general, right? So it's just being human again, and looking back on that and saying, you know, we don't need all these labels. It doesn't matter that you were a soldier. It doesn't matter what you did. It was, you have these traumas, and you're a human. And we need to talk. What happens when the war ends, but the battle never does? When the uniform comes off, but the pain sticks around? Welcome back to Team Trek Podcast. Tonight's guest is Matthew Butler, a retired Green Beret with 27 years of service and 4 years in combat. But this isn't a war story. It's what happens after. Matt's journey is one that too many of us understand and all of us need to listen to. Let's get into it. Matt, welcome to Team Trek Podcast.
Thanks for having me on. It's an honor. It's a pleasure.
Dude, I'm so excited about tonight's show, and we're just going to let the audience know right off the bat, this is just kind of going to be a little bit of a teaser, right? We're going to have you out in studio here in the next couple of months, and we'll do a full-on podcast. So with that in mind, we're going to skip over a lot of the usual backstory. The audience understands, man, you spent a better part of your life in combat. And when you retired, issues, you want to just take us from there?
Yeah. But I want to give two quick caveats. I started my career enlisted. I was a signal guy, got commissioned into the field artillery. Actually, I was in the Guard. I was in 19th Group. I transferred to 19th Group. When I finished the Q course, I transitioned over to active duty. Spent 20 years from 98 to 17 as a Green Beret. Had about 4 years in some classified units. And I also want to be everything that you and I have talked about, that this is going to kind of the bigger time when I come down and visit you is going to be post book release. And I'm very clear in my book, and I want to be clear now that, I know that, as an officer, I spent a lot of time behind the fence doing staff work. So, yeah, I got, nearly 4 years in combat, but I also know and respect that it wasn't the same type of miles that the NCOs put in, and I want to give respect to them in so doing. Fair enough?
Fair enough, Matt. And, it's 4 years in combat on anybody, regardless of what the situation is. I mean, it's still going to carry a lot of weight. So we appreciate you saying that, man. But you were there with us, so we understand.
Yeah. So let's jump into it. And again, I guess one more sort of preface is that, you and I have talked about this offline before we hit the record button. But I had an extraordinary experience almost 5 years ago. One that I've really only let my inner circle into for the past 5 years. The decision for me to come out, so to speak, has weighed heavily on me, because there's a part of me that knows that if I don't become more vocal and talk about this experience and who it is that I am and what it is that I do, I won't be able to reach those that need to be reached. But there's also the idea that maybe, there's going to be people in the community that feel quite frankly, that I'm batshit crazy. and I guess it's okay to just I'm to the place now where I want to step out into the light, talk about it more openly, and especially with the book. Yeah, there on the bottom, awakegreenberet.com is my website. It'll be where you can find the book. The book is titled From Green Beret to Shamanism, One Man's Journey to Heal. So How did that all happen? Like you said, I retired. Like I was a functional alcoholic. I was hitting the bottle pretty hard when I was on active duty. I was taking, muscle relaxers or opioids or Ambien and washing it back with Jameson every night. Um, when I retired, I moved back to Utah. I was really reluctant about that, but circumstances brought me back to Utah. And what happened in that is that I couldn't conceal it from my loved ones anymore. Yeah, I think it's okay. I think we can do it in the military. We can kick ass in PT and we can do our jobs well enough that even if people suspect it, they don't care because, the mule's still pulling the plow, so to speak, right?
As long as you're
Um,
doing your job and it's to a certain degree, no one's going to say anything.
yeah, yeah, because they don't want to rock that apple cart. But when I got home, like you said, like it's the perfect storm for all of us. It's wrestling with the PTSD, the depression, the chemical dependency, and then we take the TBIs, which is a big part of it, and then even more so, like I feel like there's an an additional layer of trauma that's added in when all you've known for 30 years of your life is almost like being institutionalized
Sure.
like and I don't mean that so much derogatorily, but other than just factually, like you were in an institution, you can't leave that institution after 20, 25, 30 years and not have that. And so now, like, on a Friday, I had all the medals and ribbons and badges and tabs that a guy that spends 20 years in special ops does. And, you could walk into a room and people would know who you were and what you had done and all that shit. And then, yeah, Monday I'm like hanging out in my flip flops and my cargo shorts, going like, "Who am I? What am
Right.
I?" That transitional period was really hard too, and so all of that, and then on top of that, I was going through my third divorce. In 2017 through 2018, and my life was just basically a shit show. Um, I ended up getting into the silliest of arguments with my parents in 2018. And it was on Father's Day, in fact, my father's Father's Day celebration. And I gave it about 6 weeks. I went back to my father's house to try to mend the fence in August. And unfortunately, what happened is that argument, instead of mending the fence, the argument just reopened the wounds, and we just started back at the same argument again. And my parents are deeply religious Christian people, Christian folk, and I was dropping a lot of f-bombs in the house, and I knew enough from going to 11 years of therapy that, like, how to recognize the signs, right? That I was becoming triggered. I was leaning into violence. And so I had the dry mouth, the flushness, the rapid heart rate, the clenched fists. And so, my therapist had taught me, like, hey, when you recognize that, like, that's your fight flight moment. So leave, get out of the house, get out of the situation, go for a walk, count to 10, do some breath work, all the things it taught me. But,
Sure.
but in my haste, I was F you, F this, and so, I mean, actually, there's fight, flight, and freeze, right? And no Green Beret's got, probably any amount of freeze in them. We
Right.
got a whole, we probably don't have a lot of flight in us, and we got a whole lot of fight in us.
Right.
And so I was like in the midst of navigating fight, flight, freeze, and chose flight. And so, I'm like, F you, I'm out of here. But what my father said to me was, get your ass back here, son. And what he meant and what he said were two different things, and he and I have unpacked that now since then several
Okay.
times in a healing way. And FYI, we have healed that relationship
Good.
through plant medicine, which I'm about to talk about. But what happened was, I heard "get your ass back here," which means you just took away. I don't got freeze, and you just took away flight. So okay, you want fight? Good enough.
Right.
And he got up from his easy chair and was coming towards I'd already made my way halfway to the door, and when I heard that, I turned and spun around, and I was standing in the hall, and he's on his way towards me, and I did a warning shot, right? Like I balled my fist and I swung like across my chest and into the wall, as to say, like, the next one is on, is going to be on your nose, you know. And he got the message. He stopped, and he just calmly turned to my sister, and and you got to know that I'm adopted, and my parents are like 5'1" and 5'6", and and they're very calm and peaceful, loving people, and they had to raise this Viking 6'1" combat sport loving Green Beret Ranger type, and yeah, yeah. So I say that to paint the picture that, like, if you want to know true courage, there's that 76-year-old man, 5'6", standing between me and my mom and my sister and his home, saying, "Not on my watch," and
Wow.
yeah, wow. And so he got the warning message, and that like, so he didn't come any further, but then he turned to my sister and just said, "Okay, call the cops." And I kind of laughed at it, and I went into, I went over to the driveway, went outside, sat in my truck, and was like, "Oh, I'm not going to make a bad situation worse. I'll sit here and wait for the law enforcement to show up and give them, the story, and I'll move on." Right.
Sure.
But we lived in a real rural area, or they do, and so it took them 45 minutes to get there. They get there, and I literally spent about that much time explaining it, like 5 minutes. Like, yeah, my dad and I got into an argument. I punched a wall. Nobody was harmed. I didn't touch anybody. Can I go? They're like, "No, just stay here. Let us talk to your folks." And the other sad twist is this is, like, I hadn't lived there in 30 years or more. So, it was guys I grew up with that were there to investigate. Anyway, they go inside, they talk to my parents. They're there for about 45 minutes. They finally come out, and I lean out the door, like, super impatient, super ego, all the things, like, roll down the window, "Can I go now? I got to go mow my lawn," type of response.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I got shit to do, man. Like, can we hurry this up? And he just kind of just casually got closer to the car and said, "Mr. Butler, I need you to step out of the car, put your hands on the hood," you know. And I was like if I'd been a computer, it would have been the blue screen of death. Like, what is
Right.
happening here? Like, this does not compute. What did my parents say? Like, holy
Right.
shit, what is going on? And you just kind of felt like tunnel vision closing in around me. Like, whoa, what is happening? But I knew enough not to, to further fight, right? So somehow I dug deep and found a degree of self-control, got out, did the thing, pat down, put your hands behind your head, was cuffed. And again, small town of 500 people, man. Like, you could have sold tickets and popcorn to the spectators, man. It was not a
Hey,
good thing.
you're thinking this is no big deal. I
Yeah.
punched a wall. What's the problem?
Yeah, exactly. How many walls have I punched in my lifetime? I
Sure.
mean, too many, but certainly this has never had this outcome.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
what I'd later learned is, in Utah, there's and I understand why, and I don't fault it, but in an effort to be way more protective of women and children, the law on the books in Utah is that if there is a domestic disturbance that involves, or if there is destruction of property during a domestic disturbance, it is an automatic trip to jail. Period. No,
Interesting.
yeah. So that was the circumstance. I didn't know that at the time. He didn't, and they didn't explain it to me. They just arrested me. You
So you
know
broke the wall.
what's that?
So you put your fist through the wall. Then
Oh,
is
yeah,
that
yeah,
what it?
yeah.
Okay.
Pretty good size hole, actually. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I didn't mean to derail it. I'm
No.
thinking the same thing, right? What is taking so long? All
Mhm.
you did, you got angry, you hit a wall, you hurt a wall. Nobody else is hurt. What's happening here, right? Because
Right.
you spent 25 years in the military where this is happening in the barracks. I mean, you're
Yeah.
getting into fights, and this is normal life for you.
Boys
And
being boys. Yep. So it didn't even compute with me at first. But long story short, I went to jail. I I didn't spend I didn't even spend a full day in jail. But it was enough. It was enough. Like, there's a difference between being in training and having those handcuffs on you, and having those handcuffs on you in real life, right? Like it got my attention real quick. And then even when I was in the cell by myself, I was still in fight flight. Like I could not regulate. So I'm pacing back and forth and pacing back and forth in that little tiny cell, just like, a caged animal, and just wanting, like, just to, just rage. Like, if I could have ripped that door off, could have, anything. I just wanted out of there so badly. Um, so long story short is, I came out of that cell that day with two major realizations. The first was, I, I have to own this. I'm not owning it, and I need to own it. I need to own it all. I need to own the PTSD, the depression, the suicidal ideation, the addiction, the alcoholism. It's time to own up to this shit. Because I'd been hiding it, like I told you. I was a functioning alcoholic. On the surface, things looked great. I had a $800,000 home and a retirement and a six-figure job and two race cars and a motorcycle, and all the toys that, life was on one level really easy, but on the other level it was like, it was hollow and empty and dark and chemical dependency, and I didn't even want to live anymore. I was just covering it with toys and activities and money and whatever else. The second realization was the idea that, I was in that loop of insanity where we keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting some sort of different result, right? Because it wasn't for lack of trying. I mean, I was plugged into the VA. I was plugged into, like I said, I'd been in counseling for, like a solid 8 or 9 years by that point. Regularly, I went. I was in AA. I was in therapy. I was in everything. I was taking antidepressants, and it's like, okay, like, what more do you want from me? It's not for lack of trying. It's not for lack of participation. So there's two. So I walked away knowing, A, I got to own it, and B, I got to find a different solution. And, I don't know how, or I don't remember the exact number of times I researched it. But if you go to Google right now and you Google, what is the cure for PTSD? You're going to get a summary before you start getting search results. But that summary essentially says, well, sorry, you're shit out of luck. There's medication that can help you deal with some of the symptoms, but it's a lifelong problem, right? Yeah, yeah. So okay, let's bypass that. Let's keep going. You're a Green Beret. You got more in you in this. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. And I dug and I dug and I dug until, like, this, what finally started to happen is all my search results, the more I searched and the more I changed the search criteria, and once I kind of found that thread, it was ayahuasca. Like, okay, there's this thing called ayahuasca. I don't know anything about it, but what I know is that when I'm watching YouTube videos on soldiers that have gone down to the jungles to drink it, like, okay, that like, I can see in his eyes that there's a change, that there's something going on there, right? So that was kind of like my first little glimmer of hope, where, okay, I need to find this. And I went down the path of trying to find it, trying to find a place to do it, but about that time COVID kicked off. Yeah, I wasn't going to, Guatemala, Costa Rica, Colombia, Peru to drink ayahuasca during COVID. Like, who knows how long I was going to be gone if that happened, right? And so I also ironically took a job back at, what's now called the SOMTC, but not the medical SOMTC, the Special Ops Mission Training Center. There on, going out on the compound where Third Group is now housed, where the new buildings are.
Okay. Yep, I'm familiar with that area.
Yeah, so we would train battalion and group size staffs. We would put them through exercises. So I went back there, and I was back there for about a year before I came back because my father had some health complications. But while I was there, one night I was out. I was talking to my wife on the phone because she was still in Utah. I was talking to my wife on the phone, and I heard a voice. Like, there's no other way for me to say this. And actually, I think this is a good place for me to caveat and to say this too. Like, like those that know me, and for those that don't, like, I was raised in Utah, and there's no way to sugarcoat this, but the Mormon Church is pretty pervasive here. And in my estimation, the Mormon Church is a cult. It's if you study cult behavior and how cults work and how cults operate, there's this thing called the BITE method, where it's behavioral control, informational control. I forget what T and E stand for, but the LDS Church, the Mormon Church, is cultish. And so I had been raised with this ideology that, hey, this man 200 years ago said this, therefore it's true, and we're not going to deviate that from that. So therefore, it is the way it is, period, end of story, no discussion. I say all that because I'm going to dip into some woohoo stuff here. What some of your audience will probably call woohoo and be automatically dismissive of. But what I'm here to tell you is it's not. It's not easily dismissed. In other words, when because of my background, because of my being part of the Mormon Church, and having been told that, like, you're not allowed to question things. If you come to me and tell me right now, like, hey, like, this is the way it is in the woohoo world, and you're not allowed to question that, like, that's a major, major red flag for me.
Sure.
So I guess what I'm trying to communicate to you and to the audience is like, everything that I am about to tell you, in today and in the follow on and in my book and anything that you'll see in my future social media posts is stuff that I have had to dig into from a real clinical, deep research place and find scientific evidence to back what I'm saying. Okay. So I heard a voice. We call that clairaudience. There's actually 9 different clair senses. We mostly talk about the 4, which is clairvoyant, seeing; clairaudient, hearing; claircognition, which is a knowing; and clairsentience, which is a feeling. And then there's one like clair smell and taste. So people will talk all the time about they're driving down the road and they smell their grandfather's cologne, Old Spice or something like that, Brut maybe, right? And like, maybe you're having a bad day, and then all of a sudden you smell Old Spice. Like, that's your grandfather showing up and saying, "Yo, I'm still here. I still got your back," right? So I heard a voice that said, "Google ayahuasca retreat Utah." First of all, I'm not very, at this point in my life, not very used to hearing voices. Second of all, like, yeah, sure. Like, somebody's going to advertise a Schedule 1 narcotic retreat in Utah in the open, in the clear, right? Really, like, that's laughable. So I kept putting it off and putting it off. But ultimately what happened is like, okay, fine. Like, whatever this voice is, like, just to shut you up, I'm going to do it.
So you heard it multiple times then?
What's that?
So you heard the voice multiple times. It wasn't just once.
Yeah, it was pretty persistent there. Like I say, for about, like 10 minutes while I was talking to my wife, and I'm like, I'm going to call you back, babe. There's something I got to do, like, click, go to Google, ayahuasca retreat, Utah. And like, holy shit, like, one pulled up, and it was like a week after I was set to quit my job and move back to Utah. So I called the number. I spoke to the shaman that was leading the ceremony, and I'm like, hey, like, I just saw this. I see it's like in 2 weeks from now. Do you have a seat? She's like, as a matter of fact, I have 1 seat. And I said, if you got Venmo, I'll pay for it right now. Like, that was it. That was the amount of thought I put into this. Okay. Like 45 seconds worth, right?
What did you know about ayahuasca at that point?
What did I what?
What did you know about ayahuasca at that point?
Well, again, I'd done all this research. I knew that like, I guess I didn't know, but I had this deep conviction that it probably would have, that it was going to address my issues. I had a belief, or a hope rather, a real deep hope that this was going to work. And just hadn't able to connect because of the time and because of COVID and whatever. I had no idea about the active molecule being DMT. I had no idea about the two main ingredients. I had none of that. All I knew is like, okay, like I think this is it. And I think that you have to understand too that my mindset was one of like desperation. Like I really, like I was in the corner, man. Like one more violent outburst, and now I've violated my patrol or parole. I violated, the terms of my um, I was part of my sentencing was anger management classes and parole and community service and all this stuff. And it was like, okay, strike two. Next time is going to be incarceration, right? So, so I was still in that real desperate place. So that's why probably more than anything, it was a 45-second conversation. And I just like, yeah, what's your Venmo? Boom, done. So like, 5 minutes later from hearing the voice, hanging up on the phone call to paying a deposit for the retreat. Um, Fast forward about 2 or 3 weeks, actually, it's probably closer to three. Um, I'm in ceremony. And you have to understand also that, my wife has a stepson who passed away in 2019, and his birthday and my birthday were the same week, and they're the same week of summer solstice. And and so I was going to be in this retreat during the week of solstice, during my birthday, during our son's birthday, and also that week was a solar eclipse and these solar flares and like some real serious energy, which at the time meant nothing to me, but now looking back and understanding how the cosmos works, and when energetic events occur in the universe, there's significance behind those.
I'm
So
starting to see more things like talking about that floating around the internet. I guess there was a big shift recently where, yeah. Anyway, I don't
well, no,
understand
no,
it.
no. Let's hit that real quick. Yeah, about 2 months ago, all seven planets came into alignment for the first time in like thousands of years. And so the universe is, everything in this world is a microcosm or a metaphor for like we're a metaphor for the universe, and the universe is a metaphor for us. Like we have the same amount of water that the earth has, right? Like the earth is a body, we're a body. Or you can look at it from the universe, and you can look at the infinite space in every cell versus the infinite space in the universe. So when that planetary alignment happened, really what the universe was signaling is like my seven chakras just got in alignment. And so the universe is now in an energetic alignment, which is a signal and an opportunity, invitation for the universe to go and do, extraordinary things because it has all of its power now. It's not out of alignment where it has been in the past. Now it is. So that's the same for us when we need to get our chakras and our energy centers into alignment. So it was like, oh, like so yeah, like there's a big shift, and what that is to me is the tumblers of the lock falling into place. That's ushering in this whole new spiritual awakening in this universe and in this world.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So
Bit of a
before we deep dive that, right now, that's going to be our next episode. But so going back, your
so
birth, your dead stepson's birthday, these things are aligning, and you're not really aware of it, but you find yourself in this ceremony.
right. So I found myself in this ceremony, and most of that was all unbeknownst to me, except for that it was my birthday, and I
Right.
was aware of solstice. I mean, my dad taught me to navigate by stars and lunar and things like that. So I had an awareness at least around what solstice was.
Do you mind talking about it just for a second for the audience at home?
About solstice.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So solstice, you know, there's like four real key events in the calendar, which are winter solstice, the short, and for the northern hemisphere, which is the shortest day of the year. So actually, winter solstice is a celebration of light, because from December 21st on, light is coming back into our lives, right? Summer solstice is the longest day of the year, which means that going forward, the light is diminishing. So it's a different type of energy where we need to, release things and let go of things as we move into the darkness. And then we have two events sandwiched in between, which are both equinox, which, by the way, I just got back from Colombia last week when I was down there taking a group of Green Berets to Colombia to do the medicine during equinox, which is the two times when the universe is in complete balance, when all the days are equal. So it's just a kind of a way to look at the universe in terms of it going through its cycle. It's medicine wheel, we call it. The medicine wheel being four quadrants of the circle where there's birth. So that would be like the winter solstice at the top at the 12 o'clock, moving into birth, and then equinox at the 3 o'clock, moving into summer at the 6 o'clock, solstice, and now moving into fall to the 9 o'clock, which is our harvest, and then finally winter, which is rest. And so that cycle is in our lives, but it's also in the universe.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. That cleared things up for me. So I'm sure it did with everybody at home too. So
yeah. So that was the context that I went to this ceremony, and it got weird. Like those 3 weeks leading up to ceremony were weird. The shaman kept calling me. She kept asking for like one-on-one Zoom meetings. I thought it was normal. I later came to find out that no, I was the only one given the VIP treatment, I guess. I joke and call it the VIP treatment. And what I found out later is that she was in on the joke. But I'll explain in a minute.
okay.
She knew what was unfolding, and she was checking my energy, checking me out. Like, would get on a Zoom call and she'd be doing tarot readings and pulling cards and kind of talking to herself, like, okay, this is interesting. And then she'd ask me another question, pull tarot cards, and kept reading. She said some things in there that sort of scared me to the point that I'd never had like any sort of palm reading, tarot reading, any of that in my life. I mean, again, I grew up hardcore Mormon, entered the military, not a lot of guys in the team rooms are going to getting tarot readings, right? So this was a whole new world to me. And like, okay, like I'm in this world now. I better go get like a tarot reading. I better go get some outside information, right? So I was getting a lot of good messages and a lot of things were lining up, and I still felt good about it. And she, later she told me that those VIP treatments was because she wasn't sure. She was sure about me and sure about what she needed to say, but not sure that, that I was ready really to hear what she was about to tell me. And so I and one of the things that she told me, again, that kind of stood out is she said, Matt, everybody, I think most people are familiar that ayahuasca causes this deep purging, like vomiting and shitting and vomiting while shitting and other things, right? Like it's getting the dark energies out of us is what that is. It's not biological. It's not, I had a bad burrito from a gas station. It's energetic. It's energy stored in your body coming out in those forms. So I go to that. She said, yeah. So she said, like, Matt, you're not going to purge very much at all. You've drank so much ayahuasca in your past lives that it's going to feel like an old friend to you. And I was like, okay, crazy, whatever, just like really my whole attitude going into this was give me the tea. Like when they talk about setting an intention, when and I do it this way, because you hold it in your dominant hand, you place your non-dominant hand over the tea to place your intention, which is like instructions into the medicine. And so I'm like, my intention, like people spend weeks and months crafting this perfect intention. Mine was, dear God, don't let me go back to jail. Like that was it. Like,
just fix me.
Yeah. Take take the rage out of me so that I don't go back to jail, basically.
Gotcha.
And the other mistake that I made, and I really want this to be heard by your audience, is like too often I think that people who come to ceremony with me, I think that they think of ceremony as the finish line. And I certainly thought of ceremony as the finish line. Like once I drink this magic tea, this silver bullet, life is going to be perfect. I'm not going to have a temper and I'm safe to be around people and not, lose my shit. That is that is flatly wrong. You drink the tea, it shows you the problem and the solution, and then you go to work. And that's the integration period after. It's a 30-day period where you have neuroplasticity, meaning your brain is now soft and squishy instead of like clay, instead of like kiln dried pottery.
Okay.
So you're right now, all of us have kiln dried pottery because life has shaped us so, and we've reinforced it with habits over and over and over to where the point that it's firm. Okay. But you do psychedelics and it's like pouring that water back onto that and somehow magically turning it back into clay. And in that space, that is what the neuroplasticity and the neurogenesis, where you're actually also growing new brain cells, is where the magic happens. But I didn't know any of that at the time. So I was simply going there like, please don't let me be angry anymore. I don't want to go to jail. Go right.
Okay.
So I drank the tea. The first hour, nothing happened. Like everybody around me was purging and crying and moaning, and and I'm sitting there looking around like, I want my money back, man. Like, damn it, I was another dead end, like angry. And the shaman came back over and says, or actually an assistant came over and said, the shaman wants to see you. So I went back up to, and this was all outside. I went back up to her altar and she's like, I'm going to give you a second cup. So she gave me a second cup and I went back to my space. And within, 30 seconds, maybe a minute max, like my whole world just kind of went black and I was going back into that tunnel vision space. So I quickly grabbed my cho liner, literally grabbed my poncho liner, laid down on my right side. Pulled the poncho over my head and it began. What I call, and what one of my friends, I don't want to use his name, he's in our circles, but he calls it the veil of ignorance, right? Like this earth is a school. And the only way the school works is if we're not aware of the way the universe works. That's the whole point about waking up, is you somehow need to punch through that veil of ignorance, whether through psychedelics or other work, so that you can begin to understand the universe in its whole, so that you can actually learn the lessons you need to. Well, anyway, the veil of ignorance, it is, that's what people see when they talk about the colors they've never seen before, the shapes, the geometry, like this kaleidoscope effect. And man, I was like, okay, like this is a psychedelic experience. This is what I paid the money for. Awesome. It probably only lasts for about 10 or 15 minutes, but I don't know. I have no way of naming it.
Feeling only lasted like 10 or 15 minutes of. Okay, so can we back up just
Yeah.
a little bit? You mentioned a couple of things, Matt, and I didn't want to stop you. So this ceremony is taking place outdoors, and this is in Colombia.
No, this is in Utah.
I'm sorry. This is in Utah. It's outdoors. And what time of year is it? You said it's
Solstice.
March.
Solstice. So it was June. The exact date was like June 23rd.
Okay.
So right on the
So
hill of the solstice.
so summertime in Utah, outdoor ceremony. So you've got, basically, you described it like you have your place to lay. Everyone's got a kind of their own setup.
Yeah.
And you said you had your poncho liner with you as your blanket of choice. And so after you took that second cup and you went and sat down, you said 30 seconds a minute, and you just felt yourself just going. Can you describe that a little bit more?
Yeah. So like sort of, and this has like been common throughout. Like you have to understand that at this point, I've had hundreds of cups of this medicine, right? And to that experience, every single cup has been the same. And so what I generally feel is it kind of feels like a real flush, like warmth coming on, like almost a discomfortable warmth, right? At first, like a high fever, just kind of flush your whole body. I'll also feel nauseousness in my belly and maybe even a little bit in my head. And then you feel like something like energy creeping up your back, coming up over you, like from the bottom up, like kind of enveloping you with like a density, is the best way to describe it. And that's when I was like, oh, okay, something for real is about to happen. And also at that time, that's when the blackness started to close in on me. So that's when I laid down
Okay.
and then,
And
pulled poncho over my head.
okay, so now are you just laying there with your eyes closed? It's dark under your poncho liner and
I have my eyes closed. Yeah, it's dark. I mean, it was summer and it was probably about 6, 7 in the evening. So there was still sunlight out, but wasn't aware of that. I was my eyes were closed and I was under a poncho liner on a yoga mat.
are you still pretty aware of what the others are going through? I know you said at first you watched them purging and moaning. Are you still pretty aware of them?
At this point, no. I mean, I could have been like you are able to be aware of that as if you wanted to, because it is like a lucid dream, meaning like, okay, I can be in my dream, but if I needed, like sleeping, like I can be in my dream, but if I suddenly need to pee, I can get up and go pee, right? Like you're not held hostage in that space. You have the awareness to consciously bring yourself out if you need to. But
Okay.
I was deliberately ignoring all that because what was, now I like, okay, now this is real. Like now it's time to focus. Like now you're something's about to happen, and buckle up, buttercup type of attitude.
Okay. So do you want to talk us through that?
Yeah.
Because you said it was about 10-15 minutes. You want
So
to talk us through that for you?
yeah, like let me just, yeah, I'll continue. So what happened next was is like, yeah, the kaleidoscope comes, colors that you've never imagined, geometry, just, it's wonderful. It's beautiful. It's so safe and full of love and gentleness and enjoyable. Like I never want that part to end. It always does, but you're like, if I could just stay right here in this space for 6 hours, that'd be excellent. But it ends, and then immediately the next thing that happens is I see our son, and like he's sitting cross-legged from me, 3 feet away, like, yo, what's up? And I actually shouted. I screamed. Actually, I'm like, I think I yelled, like, oh my god, or something, or fuck, or I don't know, but I mean, I know I yelled, and like I'm like, did I just die? Like my god, like what is happening, right?
So you see him, like, does he look real to you, or
Oh
is
yeah,
it like,
no, and it's not even like it's a hallucination, and that's the thing I need to stress too, Ryan. Is like I know for people who are new to this experience that it's you know people want to use the word hallucination a lot, right? Like figment of your imagination. Well, when you have these experiences, the word that the psychedelic community calls is they call them ineffable. The definition of ineffable is there are no words to describe this. And really that is part of the dilemma in these psychedelic experiences, trying to convey them. But there is this level of knowing that is so deep, it's on like the cellular level that this is real. So it's not a figment of imagination. It wasn't a hallucination. Our son was there. Kyle was there. Kyle was there. And later, because I talked to him a lot, and you can kind of see, I don't know if you can see it, but his picture's right there above on my altar.
okay,
I essentially, I speak to him all the time now, through these experiences and through my work. And what he later told me is like, yeah, like that was one of my missions was, I can go do more work now because this part of my mission, that bringing you through the veil. And later he brought his mother through the veil. But bringing us through that veil and being that first person to see and greet us, was part of his mission. And so I spoke to him for a little while, like 5 or 10 minutes. And then he's like, okay, I need to go now. And then the shaman came over, and I and she started to talk to me, right? And I didn't have the words for it at the time, but now recognize what it is. Now being in this space, it's called channeling, where it's you're when you channel, you can people can channel light language, which are it's a language that's made up of inaudible, unrecognizable sounds, but they convey the energy or the meaning behind what's going on inside your consciousness and your subconsciousness. That's one form of channeling. But what I was channeling, and sometimes this happens, there's a lot of famous people out there who channel like different personas. Like there's one guy who channels an alien by the name of Bashir. You can look him up on YouTube. And that guy, when he goes into his trance, Bashir speaks through him. And what I ended up doing in like the very first, after Kyle left, was I ended up channeling an ancient ancestor by the name of J. And he's on my wall too, right there. Anyway, Jay, I was channeling Jay when the shaman came over, and she just sat with me and she's like, Matt, what's going on? And I just said, and I didn't realize it, but subconsciously I'd formed this fist, right? And I was holding it here. And we're talking about like a 60-year-old little Mexican lady, right? And she just kind of put her hand on my hand gently, and she just kind of whispered really softly. She's like, "What is this? What's going on?" There was no fear in her face, no, not any expression of like she feels like she's in danger. She was the most calm, peaceful, loving person. And I was just like, and then I started speaking in a guttural tone, like, this is me, man. This is me. Like it wasn't my voice, right? Like it was Jay. It was this. That was this other thing. And she just kind of put her hand on it and she says, well, let's just put that down for a second, right? And then she's like, and she asked me, like, what does it represent? And I said, and again, I said, it's me. Like you don't understand. Like everybody has counted me out my whole entire life. Everybody's bet against me. My whole little childhood in that little town, like being adopted, being abandoned, being raised as an outsider, struggling with my weight, my whole issue, not being the best at sports. Like my whole path in the military career was almost subconsciously to prove something to myself. like I look back and it was like, okay, where's the next ridge line? Show me the next ridge line. Oh, okay. Become an officer? Fine. Oh, SF? Let me try that. Okay, fine. Ranger school? Got it. Tier 1 selection? Boom. Whatever. Let's just keep going. Like I was, what I was subconsciously doing was trying to prove like some sort of self-value, some sort of worth, because that adoption, which is what we call the original acorn that grows into the oak that metastasizes into all the other things, the overcompensating, then the war, then the PTSD, then the alcohol, then the drugs, and da. Those aren't the problems. The real problem was that little teeny acorn that started the whole process, and never having self-worth once in my life. And that's what I was telling her. It was like, you don't understand. You don't understand. Everybody who's ever bet against me in my life has lost. And like it was my ego. And we talk a lot about ego death in this space, right?
That's what I was going to ask. So you're trying to tell her all these things, just really growling at her, but that's you're seeing all these things are happening. I'm a little bit confused on who Jay is, but I'm sure you're going to wrap back to that. But
yeah, Jay. I've later learned and I learned this on night 2. He's one of my ancient ancestors, like really, really early ancestors.
So he's not your ego per se, because I know we started talking about ego death a little bit, and
well, yeah, no, but you're great question, and the answer is yes. It's all of the above. Like Jay is his own person, and he was his own. He is my ancestor, but he's also me in a way, and it's also a way that my ego could manifest in that moment for her to work on, for the shaman to work on, and me saying, like I kind of concluded with like, I will never give this up. I will never get, like I was even like, it's my trigger finger, it's my rage, it's my, like this fist means more to me than anything else in my world, right? And ironically, it's the same fist that punched the wall, right? Like, get it? And I'm like, I'll never give it up. I'll never give it up. And she worked on me some, and she had other facilitators who were around me who were standing behind me, and they were working on me, pulling energy out of me and doing these, doing their shamanic role. And we kind of get to about, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes of conversation and work. And then she just kind of like, she's like, she put her hand on, she grabbed this hand again and she pulled it up and she says, Matt, you don't have to give it away. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's okay. And then she grabbed this hand and she says, but what we're going to do now is we're going to balance it. And I literally grunted at her. I'm like, I didn't like I couldn't form words. Like Jay had, like, that part of me, my ego, him, me, all of it being one, came out in the same, and I was like, what do you, like, I couldn't compute what she was saying. She's like, it's okay. We're going to balance it now. We're going to balance it with the healer. And I'm like, huh? And then she leaned in real close and she whispered basically, and she said, Matt, all of this was orchestrated, all of it. The solstice, your birthday, doing the medicine here versus South America, every bit of this was orchestrated. And I've been waiting for you, and it's my pleasure to inform you you're a shaman. But now I got to go see my guest, so I'll be back later. Wow. Who the fuck does that, man? Like, what?
It's mind blown all over I mean, so how far, you said first 15 minutes, you spent 10 minutes with Kyle, you spent about 5 minutes with Jay, and then she came over to start working on you. You said you guys are conversating this whole time. You're trying to tell her what's going on with you, and she's just working on you. And
she's listening. She's listening, and she has her aides and her facilitators pulling energy and adjusting my chakras and doing all that stuff. But I'm narrowed in on her. I'm oblivious to this.
And then she finishes with, welcome, congratulations, you're a shaman. And
yeah, essentially her exact words were, it's my pleasure to inform you you're a shaman. Wow. You just don't remember yet. And the first thought I had, Ryan, was, I don't even remember there being a shaman package.
Oh, when you were looking through trying to choose
which one to sign up for. Yeah.
You didn't pick the shaman pack.
I was like, I actually told her, I said, that guy over there looks like me. I think you got the wrong guy.
Wow. Okay. So I'm sorry. I keep cutting you off. This is mind boggling for me. And I'm not going through it. So
and me. Yeah.
Okay. So take us back to that day there. So just take us through the rest of that ceremony, because I really want to understand that.
All right. So, yeah. So the first thing I do is instinctively what happened next is I saw this tree, the one that she was sitting in front of when she set up her altar. There was a big tree behind her. And I stood up and I walked over to that tree and I dug with my hands down into the compost, probably decades worth of composting pine needles and mulch. And I sat in it and I buried myself up to my chest in it. And what I later now and what I know now and later discovered is there's this thing called earthing and grounding, where when you are in contact with Mother Earth, it absorbs all of your negative ions, all of your negative energy, all those stray electrons that are fucking with your central nervous system. I didn't know. I mean, I knew that from past life work. Now it makes sense. But at the time, I just knew, like, something in me went over there. I dug down a couple feet in the length, pretty much the length of my body, and I laid down and covered myself in dirt. And ceremonies going on. I burned through the medicine rather quickly. I was in it, but I wasn't in it, and everybody's having their journey. And I was probably in that space, in that little shallow grave for about 30 minutes. And then I heard another voice and it said, go learn. Actually, I saw it. It was in black and white. It said, go learn. And I'm like, go learn? Second time, louder, go learn. What? Third time, go learn. And just then I saw the shaman. And so I stood up, kind of dusted myself off, went over. Her eyes met mine, and I'm like, I'm supposed to learn. Like I whispered, I'm supposed to learn. And she was with a guy that was having unspeakable, uncontrollable shaking and convulsing. She couldn't get him to stop. So she went like this, like, come on over. So I squatted. I did, I popped a squat, and I'm like this, and I'm just watching and observing, watching and observing. And I know this is completely unorthodox. So for the people in the ayahuasca community, you're going like, "Ooh, that's uncommon," and it was. It was extreme. The whole thing was extremely uncommon. Um, and and so about what I watched her for about 10 minutes. What's that?
What's uncommon about that, Matt?
What I'm about to tell you. Yeah,
Okay.
the next piece here. So I watched her for about 10 minutes, and then her eyes met mine, and telepathically we had the same thought. So she stood up and went like this, take over, and left. She left that man in my care. Like, yeah, that's extremely uncommon. I went from guest to co-facilitator in the space of about 2 hours. And
Wow.
the man's name, I'll use an alias. Let's call him Roger.
Okay.
So I walked around to the other side so that Roger was behind, had his back to me, and he had like 3 or 4 blankets on him, and like it was June and it was like 70 degrees outside. He couldn't stop shaking. And I mean, I just went into kind of ranger school mode. And I tell people all the time, like my military experience was shamanic training. I just didn't know it, right?
Right.
And so I went around behind him. I said, "Hey, Roger, are you okay?" He's like, "No, man, I can't. I'm freezing cold. I can't stop shaking." But that's a form of the purge, and I've learned that since. Is like purging comes in many ways, and he was just purging, but he also was worried because he was shaking so uncontrollably. So I said, "I know this is really going to sound strange, but would you mind if I spooned you? If I just laid down like kind of like old school ranger school, or in our fighting positions and can't get warm, right? Like, so
Right.
he said, no, please. And so I laid down, and I just kind of came in to like give him not necessarily body heat, but like just that calmness, right? That presence. And I just kind of held him. But the weird thing is the moment that I touched him, I was in his journey. I was, yeah, and that's really like shamans are. That's what shamans like. When shamans hold ceremony, shamans will go into everybody's journeys. Like they'll see what they need to see so that they can help walk people through that, so they can help people. I didn't know any. I mean, I did from past life experience, but I didn't at that moment. Like things are happening really fast for me.
Right. Yeah.
So
I any of this stuff. So, I mean, I have to assume that most people, even researching, an ayahuasca retreat, you wouldn't understand everything that a shaman's actually doing when they're there. But
yeah.
okay.
So I lay down, and the moment I touched him, I saw his journey. I saw his trauma, which was pretty horrific. And I just said, "Is that you, Roger? I see a little boy. I see a 4-year-old boy. Is that you?" And he said, "Yeah, that's me." And I said, "Is that when it happened?" And he said, "Yes, that's when it happened." And I said, "Roger, you need to go to that 4-year-old version of yourself, and you need to give him a great big hug and tell him that it's going to be okay, and that you're not going to leave him, and that it's safe now." And that's when he stopped shaking, and that's when it was over. And then he went on the rest of his journey. And I went back up and sat under my tree, just going, "What the fuck?"
That's a lot to unpack, Matt. So wow. Okay, so you end up, so when you say that you're on their journey, you're seeing the same things they're seeing. So you go from your journey where you're seeing Kyle and you're seeing Jay, you learn your
Being told
shaman.
I'm a shaman, to
You
then
learn your,
kind of coming out and then trying to make sense of everything, and then working with my first person. Yeah.
but you did something that the other shaman couldn't do.
Well, I don't know that she couldn't so much as like, like the universe has a plan. The universe is in control. Like I always tell people, there's 4 elements four elements to a ceremony. There's the divine at the top, there's the medicine, there's the participant, and there's the shaman. And the least of importance is the shaman. And maybe the universe was preventing her from having, and this is hypothesizing, but maybe the universe was having some sort of like, blockage between her and that solution in order to kind of give me a little bit of a, like, hey dude, like this is the path that this is what's going to start unfolding for you. Like for whatever reason, we have to, like, there's a certain also a point, like I do talk about validation being really, really critical in this space, but there's also a place for faith too. And understanding that sometimes we don't always understand the big picture until sometimes down the road at times. At that time, I couldn't have articulated why and how, like why things were unfolding then. At this point, almost 5 years later, I can look back and be like, yeah, I think the universe needed to give me like a little bit of a glimpse, because really from that point on, for the next several months, I was kind of in, and again, I kind of want to apologize for some of my colorful language, but I was in a mindfuck space. Like what's ironic is that my wife and I had a vacation scheduled in that period, which was another like clue. Like when I found the dates, it was for the exact dates, four of the 7 days that her and I had planned for a vacation. So I paid my deposit, and I had to call her back and be like, oh, by the way, I just signed up for an ayahuasca. So now we got 3 days of vacation, not a week. Right. But she was supportive of it. And what happened is in those 3 days afterwards, like immediately following it, I jumped in a car and we drove to Sun Valley, Idaho. And that's significant because Sun Valley, Idaho, and those ski resorts and the lakes around Sun Valley are fed by glacier waters. And I'm a particular type of shaman. I noticed you flashed satyrhealing.org underneath. Like I'm a satyr, which is a Norse shaman. So I really don't call myself a shaman. I'm a satyr, which is a Norse version, because I stay in my cultural lane, right? Like the mother of shamans, Freya, the father shamans, Odin, his his ravens, Huden and Muden, right? The runes on my arm. I don't know if you can see the runes, the Norse divination. Okay. So I say that because what happened then was I wound up again. I the next morning I'm like, I don't know how to explain this to you, babe, but we need to go get a kayak because I need to go to that lake over there and I need to paddle out and I need to get naked and I need to get into this ice water. Like there were things that were coming up for me from past life experience, past life knowledge that I was articulating, but not knowing why I was articulating it. So, okay, she's good. Like, let's get in a canoe. We paddle across the lake. We're in a remote, isolated part of it. And even though it was still June, like that water was frigid because it was coming off of glaciers. And like I had to sit in that water and I had to ground and I had to disperse all this energy. But yeah, like the funny thing is for those 3 days now, like I'm like blowing up. I'm like, I can't stop like talking like this. I'm like talking as fast as I can for 3 days nonstop. And this shows you the wisdom of my wife. At the end of those 72 hours, 3 days, I'm driving home. At some point, she patted my chest 3 times and said, I'd get a second opinion, big guy, and walked away.
Oh my goodness. So you're coming unglued for 3 days. Was she at the ceremony with you?
No. In fact, my wife has never done, like I told you, Kyle brought her through the veil, but in a different way. My wife has never done plant medicine. So she's the objective one in our relationship.
Okay. And so she, when you first got back together, you guys are going straight for vacation. Mm-hmm. So you're telling her about your journey.
I'm telling her about Kyle. I'm telling her about plant medicine. I'm telling her about shamanism. I'm telling her about all the journeys. Yeah, I'm downloading it. I'm just like, help me make sense of what just happened, right?
And after 4 days of that, she tells you to get a second opinion.
Go get a second opinion, big guy.
Wow.
And so I literally Googled shamans near me. And I found this woman who was of mixed race. Her father was Caucasian. from Nordic descent, and her mother was Native American. And I knew nothing, but I saw that she offered runes readings, and runes are like Nordic tarot. Okay, so
Okay.
the story goes that Odin wanted knowledge so deeply that he hung from the tree of life, Yggdrasil, for 9 days. And then the gods came to him and said, if you want that knowledge, you have to make a sacrifice. And so he cut out his eye and as a sacrifice. And when he awoke, the runes were below him and he scooped them up. And so it's the Nordic form of divination. So that's why I signed up for her. I went to this. I found this woman. She was a mixed race, but she did runes readings. I'm like, that's what I want. I want a runes reading. I don't know anything about it, but I want it. Sounds like me. We all like all the guys in SF. Like whether you're, whatever descendancy you are, even if you're not 100% Swedish like me. Well, I'm Swedish and Germanic, but we all talk about Valhalla, right? Until Valhalla and Valhalla, right? Like it's part of our culture. So I'm like, oh, that's what I need. I need a runes reading. So I go get this runes reading and I tell her nothing. I tell her nothing. She's like, why you're here? And I'm like, I don't want to go into it. I just, I need some answers. So she pulled out her runes and she started casting runes. And it's a 9 rune reading, 4 cardinal directions, and then the 4 non-cardinal directions and 1 in the center. And she starts pulling these books down. She's like, okay, oh, interesting, cross-referencing. Huh, okay. And I'm sitting back going like, this is all complete nonsense. This is bullshit. Like, what I get myself into? How do I get my $50 back? About a half hour goes by, closes all the books, puts them on the shelf, leans in again and go like this, like the last one did. And she says, has anyone told you recently you're a shaman? Yeah. Still not convinced. Still not convinced. So a couple more months go by and I'm still like, head scratching constantly about like, because the other thing that happens is we talk about our third eye, which is a terrible term, because when we talk about it's really the pineal gland. But when we talk about the third eye, the problem with that is then it predisposes us that everything is supposed to be visual, and not everybody has visual experiences. Again, people are predisposed to precognition, presentience, or claircognition or clairsentience or clairaudience, right? I'll tell you, I'm not very clairvoyant. I don't see a lot. There's a lot of knowing in me and a lot of feeling in me. Like I'll get a feeling on something, right? So my third eye though is exploding. Like I'm going to the grocery store going like, oh, that person's spirit animal is a red-tailed hawk, and oh, that person used to be a queen in England back in the 14th century. And like I'm just like losing my mind, dude. Like I'm like, make it stop. Like when is the ayahuasca out of my body, right? Even though it was. But what happened was like it all parted, okay? And so here's the magic. Here's the sort of the conclusion of how I finally came to accept it. And what happened was I finally decided that really what I needed was another ayahuasca ceremony. And that woman was kind of what we call a roadman in this space, meaning they go from place to place to place holding their ceremonies, right? So I couldn't connect with her again. It was really difficult. But I found a guy in Kentucky. You can actually look him up. They're no longer in practice, but there's a thing called, I think it was called Kentucky Ayahuasca or Ayahuasca Kentucky. It was on the Vice channel. They did a little program on him. I don't want to disparage him, but there's some things there I didn't really like, but that's another story. Anyway, I wound up there and it was still a sacred experience. But they had this rule, like you don't show up until like whatever, 2:00, right? And I had about an hour to kill before I could, show up on time. So I went to a nearby state park with a lake, and I'm like, okay, these people in this space, those hippie types, man, they do some meditation. I'll give some meditation some try. I'll go over here for an hour and meditate for a little while. That was it, man. I was killing time. And I went to that park, man, and started breathing like I'd seen, like doing this slow, deep breath thing, trying to just kind of close my eyes and clear everything out. And within about 5 minutes, I left my body. I was like up above looking down on my body. And it was in that moment that I knew, because, not because I left my body, but because the moment that I left my body, um, about 5 years of repressed memories that had been repressed for 40 years came flooding back. And what I mean by that is, when I was a child, I used to be able to see energy. I used to be able to see people who had passed on. I used to be able to talk to trees and animals and all of those things. And again, no fault of my father. No, he was, my father's a wonderful man and a good man. And I'm sure he just gave the best answer in the context in which he could answer it. But when those things were happening to me, from like ages like 5, 6, 7, 8 up to maybe 10, like I went to him one day and said, Dad, what's going on with me? Like I keep seeing dead people, and that tree over there talks to me, and I can move energy. I can feel the energy of things. And, God bless him. He, being a religious leader in the Mormon faith, said, that is a cult and satanic, and don't you ever do it again. Don't you let me catch you talking about it again. And, being an adopted kid, my acorn being abandonment, and living with a fear that if I'm not a perfect child, he's going to, if my flesh and blood is wanting to discard me, good Lord, what would these adoptive people do, right? So wanting my dad's, like all of us boys do, wanting my dad's love and affection and approval, I buried that so deeply that if you had asked me before that meditation period, can you leave your body? Or when was the last time you left your body? Or when was the last time you talked to animals? Or when was the last time you saw a dead person other than Kyle, right? Like, I would have said, what are you talking about, man? Like, that's crazy. I have no idea what you're talking about. And then when I left my body, I was like, oh, snap. Oh, shit. Holy cow. Like, all those that 5 years of my childhood, which was like a place marker, right? Like the universe, like, okay, you're gonna have this experience, then we're gonna take it away, and we're gonna bury it deep, 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 deep down in your subconscious, so you can get on with your life, so that you can have a harmonious relationship with your family, do your thing, and then when I'm ready, I'm gonna pull that back, and we're gonna open up that chapter and remind you what's going on. And then, like, now it wasn't external, now it was internal, and me going like, oh my God, I was born with it. I always had it. And then I saw it, my past lives. And then real quickly, what happened is I went into that next 2 nights of ayahuasca ceremony. And on the second night, ayahuasca, she came, like, she's an entity. Like, I want people to understand that too. Like, we talk about her. Sometimes they call her the grandmother or the mother, depending on who. She'll appear as either a jaguar, an anaconda, or as a woman. And that night, she appeared to me in a very beautiful, like almost like Selma Hayek version of a woman. And like the first thing that happened was, she came to me and she says, "Are you ready?" And I said, "Yeah." I mean, I don't know what I'm answering that I'm ready for, but I'm ready. Let's roll. And she said, "Okay, come with me." And I left my body. And not only did I leave my body, but then she's like, "Okay, good. Now let's go to the next level." And we astral projected, which means you can leave your body, but when you astral project, you can go anywhere, right? So, like, literally explored the universe, with her, like every planet, the solar, like, explored the whole universe. She brought me back, gave me a rest. She asked me a third time, "Are you ready again?" I said, "Okay, yeah." She she opened up the ceiling above me, and I looked up and I could see the entire grid, the energy grid over the universe, like the same way that we have latitude and longitude lines on Earth. There's latitude and longitude lines in the universe, and nodes, and there's sacred there's portals, and this is how it's the space-time continuum. It's how extraterrestrials move and communicate. It's this whole thing. She showed that to me. And then the facilitators of that ceremony came back and said, "We think you're ready for a second cup if you'd like." And I said, "Yeah, let's go a second cup." And then she poured about a half a cup. I'm like, no, let's go. Top that off. Let's go. And so she gave me a big cup, and I went back in. And then I had gone with a couple of friends So there were four of us in the ceremony, two friends and a stranger. And my friend was a ranger bat guy. And I'd gotten in a little bit of trouble with the facilitators earlier that night because I was drumming to myself, and they came in and they're like, no, so they had like, I'd gone from like, oh, hey, you want to be a co-facilitator? Here you go, work on Roger, to like, shh, don't drum, like really constrained, right? Which was perfect because it was about to set me up for what was next. So I just had these 4 tests with Aya where she put me through my paces. And she said,
Is Aya Selma Hayek?
no, yeah, ayahuasca. Yeah, her
Oh,
name, her Aya grandmother. Yeah, Aya had just put me through my paces, and so I took that extra dose, and then my buddy from Ranger Battalion is, like going through it, like purging, crying, like on the ground, and I'm like, God, I just want to go and help him, and these people aren't. I'm getting like frustrated, and I want to go give buddy aid to my brother,
sure.
and then it clicked. Oh, just go to him. So I left my body, went over, and like I'm with him now, and I'm like, hey, come here, brother, let's clean you up. Let's, and I'm doing it energetically. I mean, if the whole thing was filmed, these people had cameras, which I don't agree with, but whatever, you wouldn't have seen it. But I was with him, and I'm talking to him. I get him cleaned off. I get the purge. I work adjust his energy. Um, you know, um, did some other things and left him. Came back into my body, and then the next guy, and then the next guy, and so I ended up doing all 3 that night. And I thought I was done. And this is the part where Kyle brings his mother through the veil. I mean, losing a child is a parent's worst dream, their worst nightmare. And there are real mediums out there. I don't care what you say. Like my wife and I we're in this space. There's an organization called IANS, which is the International Association of Near Death Studies, and there are mediums who go through like triple blind tests, like there's no way to fake this. Like it's impossible. It's done at the highest scientific standard, and they pass, and those get the IANS stamp, and then that's how you have a good medium. Well, one of the best mediums out there, you can look her up. Her name is Susan Giesman, and I've met Susan many times. She was what's an O5 in the Navy? Is it a commander? Yeah, I think it's commander.
Captain 06. So
Captain
yeah,
06, yeah, whatever. She was an O5, and you know what her O5 job was? She was aide de camp to Hugh Shelton, Green Beret, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And she married an 06 who was a Navy captain. She was a Marine, an 05. Actually, no, she was Navy. She was an 05 Navy, and she married another Navy man. And she was as 3D as me, right? Like not in the woohoo space at all. I mean, she was a really good officer to be General Shelton's aide, right?
sure.
And she's in a blended family, second marriage for both her and her husband. Her husband had a daughter who was married, who was a Marine, who married to a Marine, and was I think it was Cherry Point, North Carolina, and she was struck by lightning and killed, and she had an unborn baby. And that experience opened up Suzanne Giesman's mediumship. And so I kind of lost my train of thought about why I was sharing. Oh, I know. And so my wife was simultaneously that night in a training back here in Utah with Suzanne Giesman. And so the 4th one was Source came to me and said, okay, go find Kyle. Again, astral projected. Hey, Kyle, it's time. Let's go to your mother. And we went in astral space, and he and I and her had this vision of us sitting in these flowers, talking, me explaining what's going on to her in the astral realm spiritually, and then saying, okay, you two got this. God bless. Love you. And I exited and left him in the capable, or her in the capable hands of her son. And when the ceremony was over, I came out and flipped on my phone, and there was a message there that said, "Oh my God, like you'll never believe this, but I did my first reading, and I never would have believed it, but I got everything right on this person." I was like, "Of course you did." I'll tell you. I explain later. And so that's when it crystallized for me. Like that's when it was like, okay, like this is real. And then what happened then too is there was one other piece of this, and I'll kind of conclude there is like I always wear a stocking cap because I get, I don't want skin cancer. My dad has horrible skin cancer, and I don't want to. So I always wear a stocking cap, and I couldn't find my stocking cap that night. And I was looking and I was digging around in my poncho liner for it, and I finally felt it, and I pulled it out of that, wrapped up in that poncho liner, and I held it up. And Ryan, I swear to God, man, I was holding a Green Beret, and and it was a gray stocking cap, a gray knit stocking cap when I went there. But I reached in, found it, and pulled out a stocking cap or a Green Beret. And Source said, "You passed." And I'm like, "What?" Source has always say it 3 times. I'm really, I'm slow. And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "You passed." What? You passed. And then it all clicked that Source was speaking to me metaphorically in language like it does for all of us. It speaks to us in our language. And it was like, good job. That was selection. Tonight was selection. I put you through 4 paces. I taught you something really quick. And then you went on and mastered it. And you did those 4, you went and treated 4 people with the techniques that I had shown you. Good job. You passed selection. Now it's time to go to work. And then right after that, I went back to the first woman that did my runes reading, who said, "Has anybody told you you might be a shaman?" I went back to her and said, "Okay, let's talk. I think what I'm supposed to ask you is, can I be your apprentice?" And that was one of my 4 apprenticeships. I've done 2 apprenticeships with non-plant medicine shamans who don't use any plant medicine whatsoever. One here in Utah, the one I'm speaking of, and then one in Sweden, who I learned more Nordic shamanism from. And then I have 2 who've taught me plant medicine, one here in the States and one in Colombia who teach me plant medicine. So I've worked through 4 different apprenticeships in this process since that, finally wrapping my arms around it and going like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, it's not someone trying to convince me. It's been my past lives. It's what I was born with. It's what I'd forgotten, and now it's who I am. And this is the first time I've really publicly said those things. Like, I mean, obviously my inner circle knows, of course, and I work hard at it. Like, you're in my sort of my shamanic office. Like, this is where I see clients, not for plant medicine ceremonies, but like other types of healings and other different ceremonies. Like, if you go to saterhealing.org, like that's me, and you'll see those things that I do. And so I mean, there's people who know, but I've never really owned it. I mean, there's a few people in the SF community, like really close friends, who I've gotten into ceremony, led through ceremony, but like in terms of like really truly outing myself and saying this is who I am and what I do, and being prepared for the repercussions within the community. Yeah, White Green Beret, because really truthfully, the other part of my mission is like I really believe that I'm uniquely called, because like I may not have been an NCO and I may not have gotten as many scraps as you guys did, but the truth of the matter is I've also, I mean, you know how it is. Hey, this guy's claiming to be a SF guy. Does anybody know him? Right? It's all built like that day like I remember the last day of selection, being called into the auditorium and the NCO saying like, "All right, day 1, let's go to work. And oh, by the way, your reputation precedes you. It's all built on your reputation. Selection never ends." Right.
Right.
And I may not have been, like I said, I may not have been the most, may not have gotten into the most scraps, and may not have had, whatever. But I stand by my record, and I'll send my ORB and my DD 214 to anybody who fucking wants it. I carried my ruck. I think, honorably, and you can call me a wacko, a nut job, whatever you want, man. But the truth of the matter is like, every word that I'm telling you is true. And I think I have a role in this life, and that's why I reserved all the Awake Green Beret for my social media, which I haven't produced yet. I got the handles. I haven't put anything out because I'm waiting for a social media content editor to help me polish that stuff up. But yeah, it's coming soon, where I'm gonna. It's more than about helping people find the medicine. It's more about helping people heal. Well, like we going back to the part about the cosmos. Like I wish people understood really truly how deeply what is going on in this universe, where there is a massive, massive spiritual change coming, where we are transitioning from what we call the 3D. There's different dimensions, right? The 1D is the core of the earth, the iron heart, they call it. 2D is the plants and the animals. 3D is this world that we live in. The 4D is the astral realm. The 5D is this paradise. Every tradition talks about it, even the Christians. So you hardcore Christians out there that want to throw me on the pile, go read your own Bible. Like, it talks about it. It's the paradisical glory, man. And that is coming. And what people don't understand is that you're standing in the middle of a spiritual crossroads and choosing whether or not you want to be, wide awake or asleep at the wheel. Either way, man, I feel uniquely in a unique position to be able to speak to the woohoo, but in our soft language, in the masculine language, because you know, I fucking earned it, man. I did my thing.
No, dude, Matt, absolutely, man. First of all, thank you so much for coming and talking about this. We tend to be hesitant for a reason, right? You mentioned we have a reputation, right? We guard that reputation because you earned it, and every day you protect it and you continue to earn it. And as soon as you're doing something that's might be considered, as you said, wacko, people are gonna tend to cut away, all those kind of things. So at the end of the day, what we're doing is see one, do one, teach one, right? That's what Green Beret has always been. And that was you in your ceremonial medicine space, right? As you were describing that, that's what you were doing. They showed you one, then you showed that you can do one, and then you went and healed other people, man. So see one, do one, teach one. At the end of the day, we're doing whatever we need to do to stay around, right? Like we don't care. At Team Trek, whatever modality has kept you here, that's what we want to talk about, and that's what we want to explore. So, I mean, you're not going to get any judgment at all from us, and I think we're at a place right now, at least in the community, where guys have heard about enough success stories within the ayahuasca space or the medicine space that now people, I think, have gotten to the point where they want it for themselves, and so they want to know. They're admitting that they need help. They want to know, how do I get to this? So talk us through that. You've said that you take some guys down and walk them through. What's the best way to get connected with this, and then to kind of plan it out, right? Is it something that we would do next week, or should I be thinking about it a year from now? What does that look like?
Yeah, great question. And I really want to stress the idea that, like, there is no there's no rushing ceremony. I started down that research path in 2018. It wasn't until 2021 that I finally connected, because there is divine timing in that equation. Like I said, at the top of that pyramid is the divine, right? Or that diamond, actually. There's divine, the plants, the person, and the shaman. So you can't rush it. You absolutely shouldn't rush it. But if it's calling to you, and I mean like some cosmic synchronicities are happening, like one guy told me, like he hadn't thought about ayahuasca forever, and then, like, in the space of a week, like, it came up in the most random places, like with his bank teller, that type of thing. Like, that's a clue. Like, so when it feels right for you, and you're right, man, I don't care whether you sit with me or not. I really don't. Like, I want people to find the medicine no matter what. I'm also an ambassador for the Heroic Hearts Project, which collects donations. It's a nonprofit. They put everybody on scholarship. They pay for the whole thing. They take you to South America. Wonderful. My only concern there is it's also not scalable. Like, I've talked to a lot of vets in that space who've, it's another year and a half wait. Like, okay, well, we're doing a good job with Heroic Hearts, but not as good as we can be. So there's Heroic Hearts that you might want to consider. There's another organization called Vets. It's veterans seeking, something solutions. I forget the name. I'm not with them, but if you just type in Vets, VETS, psychedelic. It'll pull up. You'll find it. The other way is you can connect with me. If you go to saterhealing.org, my information's on there, my email. You can get a hold of me. We hold ceremonies. Um, I have apprentices the way that I apprenticed. I have apprentices. And so that's part of the shamanic tradition. And so I have male apprentices and female apprentices because we keep the groups segregated. And there's a lot of wisdom behind that in my mind. Men heal differently than women, and women heal differently than men. Men don't want to be vulnerable in front of women. And everything in our nature has told us not to be vulnerable, period, let alone in front of women. So let's have a circle where it's warriors, and I'll go first, and I'll show you what vulnerability looks like. And then when you feel safe enough to do it too, you can. And then the women, none of them want to be on a mind altering substance around men. Like they just don't. Like talk about a recipe for disaster. Every one of our wives and daughters and sisters and mothers have to navigate this human life with the fear of being roofied. So they need their own sacred space. And so if you reach out to us on saterhealing.org, we have monthly ceremonies and we do it legally. Like this is ass pain. Like there's no other way to describe it, but this is extraordinary ass pain because there are legal ways to do it. You have to embody the First Amendment. You have to embody what's known as the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, the RFRA, which came about because of plant medicine. And I have a lawyer on retainer, and I study all the best practices in the community internationally. There's an organization called the Sacred Plant Alliance. There's one called ICEERS, and I think it's in Portugal. And our team, stay abreast of all the recent developments because at the end of the day, no matter how well I do my job to stay as legal as possible, it really comes down to interpretation with local law enforcement.
Sure.
And so, but we do it, and we do it openly. And the medicines, well, sometimes we call it medicine, but really the best name for those plants is sacraments. They are my sacraments. If you read my churches, and frankly, we're also going through a new reorg with our website. So our church name is naturalworship.org, and that's not up yet. That's why I haven't given you that. We're redoing that one because we're using some new software for client intake and HIPAA regulated and things like that. But in any case, if you reach out to me on saterhealing.org, we'll still get you wrapped in and we can still get you into the funnel, but you can come to us for ceremony in Utah. And then I'm going back I go to the jungles about twice a year. And so we just finished up this one on the spring equinox. The next one we're going to go is fall equinox. And what we'll do, it's a 7-day trip, 2 days of travel. So day 1 is travel, days 2 through 6. Those 5 days in the center will be 3 ceremonies spaced out on day 1, day 3, day 5, with 2 down days on days 2 and 4. And then day 7, we fly back and we go from whatever U.S. destination you're in to straight to Medellin, and meet up with my shaman there, and we get after some real good healing with him. So either way, like all these different avenues. If I may, though, what I'd like to share with your group is red flags in this space. Okay.
Please.
Yeah, because like it's a hard space to navigate because you don't know. Like the funny thing is our government officials want to talk about like, well, the reason we make all this illegal, even though there's never been a fatality with any of it, is safety. And it's lunacy because when we don't do it above board, when we don't do it in the light of day, we create a black market because the demand isn't going to go away. And so the supply will be there. So you have unscrupulous actors in the space, even though it's supposed to be about love and light and healing. There's plenty of bad actors in this space. And so how do you navigate this gray area, this gray market? Because some of it's like, me trying to be in the light and work with the federal government, state and local officials to do it right. And then there's people who just do it by word of mouth in the black market, and all of it makes for a really gray market situation. And so to help navigate some of those really difficult choices, here are some red flags. Do they have an intake form? because even though ayahuasca or psilocybin have never caused a fatality, they can cause other problems if you are if you take them in conjunction with like with your SSRIs or SNRIs, your antidepressants. Those can cause something called serotonin syndrome, which can be irreversible and is very dangerous. Okay. So, do they have an intake form? Do they have an integration process? We follow a pre integration process with an integration coach leading into ceremony. And then again, remember, ceremony is not the finish line, ceremony is the starting line. And you make your money with the neuroplasticity and the integration in the back end. So we have you may know there's an organization called MAPS, which is the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. They're the ones that were pushing so hard to get MDMA through the federal government and through the VA. And our integration coaches are all MAPS trained. Do they have like an ethics board? Do they have a way to address concerns if like outside of the organization to address concerns if they have that? Do they have policies and SOPs in place? Have their facilitators been through training? What kind? These are questions, these not just questions to ask yourself, these are questions you can ask them. And if you ask these questions and you get roadblocked and stalled and the runaround, like there's your red flag. Okay. One other question that, oh yeah, like what about the medicine? Like some people say like, ancient shamanic secret, man. I'm not telling you what's in my medicine. Like bullshit, man. Like you're about to take that into your body. You are a sovereign human being. Like you should know exactly what you're putting into your body. I will show you, I will walk you through. I will demonstrate how I mix my medicine before I give it to you. Like full transparency, man. Like you're the one that's putting this in your body. You should know. So those are a few things that, in my estimation, you should really, really dig into.
Okay, so for those guys and gals at home that are interested, definitely just start doing your own research. But it sounds like it's available. Doesn't sound like it's super hard to get, but you want to do your research on it. So you listed off a couple other organizations that are working within this space. So we'll definitely add those to the description of this podcast because like you said, we just want people to get the help that they need.
Yeah.
So
I have zero ego around saving my brothers, man. I don't care who serves you, how you get it, as long as you get it safe and effectively. I'm all about it, man. Like literally, it's that age old thing about it. Doesn't we make more progress when we stop worrying about who gets the credit, man. In my estimation, we are sitting in the tsunami of mental illness, and like just pick up a broom and go to work, man. Like I don't care.
No, I like how you said that. So, although we're not trying to give credit to anybody, we do want to talk about one of your master shaman, right? And a fundraiser that you got going on right now, or a GoFundMe that's for somebody that needs some help, right? Can we talk about that for a minute?
Yeah. That's a kind of a horrific story, man. Like, I wasn't going to go to the jungles because I felt such a deep amount of respect for that tradition and felt like it was culturally insensitive for me to go there. Like I don't serve ayahuasca. I actually serve a medicine called acacia. It's spelled ACACIA for those that want to check it out. It works on the same molecule as ayahuasca, but it's not confined to only being sourced in the Amazon. It's found on 6 continents, so it's much more culturally appropriate for me to serve that. And so for those reasons, I wasn't going to go to Colombia. And then when I got I had this colleague, and he really wanted me to go to Colombia, and I was like, no. And then one night, again, this is some of the crazy shit that happens in this space. That shaman visited me in my dreams and said, like this is who I am. I'm the the person that your colleague is trying to bring you to, and I need you here. All right. So I called him the next morning, said, I'm in, let's go to Colombia. And then what unfolded was it'd take me another hour to describe this, but the bottom line is that person who brought me down there, he was embezzling from this man. And he left this, like, this man, like, if you look at that picture on the GoFundMe, he's wearing a necklace that is made out of jaguar teeth. Now think about that for a moment. Like, there's not as many jaguars as there used to be. Like like his role, his title, they don't use shaman, they use taita. So as a taita, that necklace has been passed down from generation to generation to generation, and a symbol, because again, ayahuasca appears as a jaguar, and like early traditions suggest that the way the recipe came about was the jaguar told them what the recipe was, right? And so that that is just a symbol of how ancient and old that his practice in his family on that land was, right? And so his land had never had a mortgage on it before. And this other man who led us down there and who ultimately had embezzled all of our fees to go and sit and do the medicine and never paid the taita. Taita had also put a mortgage on his land, which land had never had a mortgage on it in the first place, to build that retreat center that we go to. And then that person not only embezzled the money, but didn't bring clients. So ultimately, this poor subsistence shaman farmer guy was going to lose his land. And so ultimately, I didn't understand the scope of that until even recently. But what I did, he ended up selling off part of his land, his house, and his livestock to make the payments on the mortgage. And then he just ran out of steam. Like, the only thing left is one small parcel that has the sacred well where the water comes from that he does, makes the ayahuasca with, and also contains the jungle that has the ayahuasca vine. Well, it's cappy vine and chacruna leaf that they make the ayahuasca, but actually in their tradition, it's called yahe. But in any case, that one last little piece, and like, he called me in December and said, I need help. I got 2 more payments. And I ponied up on the first payment in December, and it's just getting too much for me too. And so on this last trip, he said, I have 1 more payment. Can you help again? And also me running out of steam financially. So I created a GoFundMe so that we can just put in a little bit of money to help him out and finally have it paid off. And so that he can have at least that last piece of land free and clear, and not have that looming over his head anymore.
No, and I'm hopeful. This podcast will get out to our brothers and sisters out there, and I mean, you're not asking for a lot, right? I think the total payment was like $7,000, wasn't it?
Yeah, 7,500 to recover like some of what I already put in. The last payment, to be honest with you, is 3,300, and we're real close to that. And frankly, yeah, I mean, if anybody could help out a little, like even $10, $20, it's all going to go to a good cause. It's all going to go to that man. But yeah, we're close, and yeah, I just, like, my wife asked me one time, like, why do I feel so compelled to help this guy? And I was like, that's an easy answer. Like, if I'm driving down the highway and somebody's car's overturned and there's, bodies on the road, am I going to drive by? Like, no, that's not the men we are. And so, for whatever reason, this man visited me in my dreams and called me down there. That last person, the person who took us down there originally, is long gone, long out of the picture. I assumed that role now of taking people down there to him. And like I say, I go down there at least twice a year. And, I'm also looking for somebody to take that. So if there's anybody out there that wants to get into the plant medicine community, probably a 7th group guy that, has a pretty good fluency in Spanish and wants to partner up with me in this effort, I'm all about that too, because I have a lot of I got a lot of irons in the fire, so to speak, and I'd love to get more people going down there and leading groups down there. He's honestly, and that's the other thing too, is like, he's, if you go to Costa Rica, which the ingredients for ayahuasca don't even grow in Costa Rica. So if you're doing the medicine in Costa Rica and Mexico, just know this is not an authentic experience. They talk about authenticity and they don't want to do it in the States because it's got to be authentic. So there's people that go to Costa Rica and Mexico. It's like, okay, well, you kind of missed the mark there, buddy. Like you got to be in the Amazon. You got to be in South America. And so, but some of these resorts in Costa Rica, they're $10,000 a pop. You have a masseuse, you have a dietitian, you have a private chef, you have a, yoga instructor on staff. You're going to be in, whatever, 5,000 count Egyptian linens. Great. Cool. Now if you go to work with me, if you go to Colombia with me, you're going to ruck up. And I mean that literally. Like we ruck in. We go, like, we're off grid, and I mean off grid. Like there is nobody coming for you. Like that is like we're going back in time. Like we're going back 1,000 years, doing it in a way that I believe, like, to me, it feels like J-set space, right? Like where we're living with the Indige, eating with
Right.
the Indige, under the roof with the Indige, with their family. And it's, and it's like, like I said, I just got back a week ago. I could roll my pants up, my sleeves up, and show you the bug bites and the jungle's harsh on you. And like, that's how I want it as a Green Beret. I don't want to go to a $10,000 a week resort, and, with a whatever they call it, the infinity pool, and like, fuck that shit, man. Like, let's go get after it like men. Let's go get after it like Green Berets.
Okay, so you dialed up a different spa package then for your retreat. Okay, noted. So with that, you mentioned it's not a $10,000 thing. So is this an affordable? Can you talk us through the
I think it's
pricing?
pretty. Yeah, I think it's pretty affordable. I mean, he charges $1,500 for 3 ceremonies, which is there's cheaper, but there's more expensive too. Like he's kind of in the middle, and then you got your travel. And so, like the last time I checked, like a direct flight to Medellin is around $600-700, and that's really all you got. You got your flight there and your ceremony space. Everything else is taken care of. You know, so it's what's that? It's right around $2,000 to $2,500 depending. But like, I mean, yeah, and that's the other thing too. And again, I love vets. I'm an ambassador for them. I don't want to get any hot water with them, but I know that their average cost per person is $4,000. So you're waiting on them to raise $4,000 per person, whereas this is like 2,000, 2,200, maybe 25, depending on if you buy trinkets at the airport. We don't, and that's the other thing too. Like I run this like an op, and meaning like we don't like, okay, well, it's we just landed, we got 7 hours until the next thing, go explore town. Like no, like we've done our risk matrix, we've done all of our risk mitigation. We run a really tight ship going down and back so as not to put any undue variables into the equation. And so we feel very protected in how we go about it. But in any case, like, yeah, it's, I have a hard time, like knowing what ayahuasca did for me, like ending my addictions, ending my alcoholism, ending my suicidal ideation, all of those things, like, it seems like it's a pretty good value for $2,200, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't really put a price tag on that, but for those of our brothers and sisters, I mean, you know the deal. Once we're out, not everybody is making a fat paycheck, and a lot of guys are struggling. So
Yeah.
$2,500, man. Like, yeah, it's there's organizations out there trying to help raise it and trying to help pay for these trips as well. Or are you working with any nonprofits for that?
No, like honestly, I don't know that. Like the funny thing is vets and heroic hearts were both started by special op guys. I kind of forget, like Jesse's the guy that started vets, the one that heroic hearts, the one that I'm in. And if I'm not mistaken, I think his name's Jesse Gold. I think he was the ranger. And then the guy that runs vets, I think, was a SIL.
That's great.
Yeah. And so, again, big love to both of them for the work they're doing. And Jesse and I have had multiple conversations and emails as recently as, a month or so ago. But the thing is like I've approached Jesse multiple times saying, like, how do I get my shaman on board with yours? And it's kind of a starter. Like, I don't know why the conversation doesn't go anywhere. That's fine. I'm not going to, cry over spilled milk or anything like that. He has his reasons. So no, I don't have a way to get my guy into that system and go on scholarship. But what I will tell you, and again, like, this is a teaser. We're going to do the next one on the book release, which is hopefully, no, like sometime this year, like no more than 6 months, maybe hopefully like 3, but whatever. 100% of those proceeds go to this. Like, I don't need it. I'm okay financially, right? And so I'm donating 100% of the proceeds to charity. It is my charity. I'll be transparent. It's going to naturalworship.org, which is a church, and all churches are automatically 501c3s. So I will pour all of that money into Natural Worship, which will go to giving scholarships for ceremonies here stateside and scholarships for ceremonies in Colombia. So,
dude, that's awesome, man. I mean, Matt, everything you're doing and dedicating yourself to this and then coming on and educating us, I think that's where we're limited the most, right? Is on the education piece. We know that guys are suffering, we know what the VA is doing, right? They're doing what they can to assist, but a lot of guys, they're getting frustrated, man. And so for you to go out, do all this research, start putting these programs together and giving guys that hope, man, I really do appreciate what you're doing. And thank you so much for coming on and explaining it. I think you put a lot of fears to bed, maybe beyond we're going to ruck in and you're going to be living, on the land for 3 days. You may have instilled some fear into some people that may not want to go to Colombia for that one. Maybe they'll just meet you in Utah, but nevertheless,
I took a Green Beret to this last one that was over 70 years old. He was a Desert Storm era guy, 5th group dude, good man, love him to death. And yeah, man, he was all about it. So we got you. It's not a hard hump. It only lasts about an hour and it's through a pretty good path. So we got you.
Dude, it sounds amazing, man. I'm going to keep hitting you up on it, and we'll see what the timing does for me and see if I can get out there with you guys. I'd absolutely love to. And I'm going to hold you to it within, plus or minus 6 months. We're going to get you back out here and get you on the couch. I want to go through your whole story, man, because it's just absolutely incredible, the life that you've been living for, the last 5 years and even before that. So I'm definitely looking forward to that.
Yeah, man, I would love to. I'd love to repay your kindness by launching my book with you if that works for you. Let's do that.
Absolutely, man. I would love to.
I'll bring you a copy, and I'll bring you a smudge fan and a homemade smudge fan, and we'll go from there.
Bro, I love it. All right, Matt. Well, hey, I'll let you get off here. We'll wrap this up, man, but I cannot wait to do this again with you. So stay in touch. I'll let you know. As people reach out, I'll put them in touch with you. And we've got all your information for your websites. As those things come online, we did put coming soon on awakegreenberet.com. So I know you got some stuff in development, and we'll keep updating this as we go, brother.
Cool. Thanks, man. I really appreciate your time, Ryan, and your staff, and for the opportunity for me to, again, like this was a sacred moment for me. I've never really been this vocal to the soft community like I had hoped or wished I guess it was just kind of a timing piece, and I was waiting for the right time, and this was the right time. And so I want to thank you for sharing your platform with me to do that.
Dude, it was an absolute honor, Matt.